Hi everyone, I'm Zach from Canada, and the title of my speech is Elbows Up. Growing up in Canada, I always had one simple question. What does it mean to be Canadian? Sure, we're quietly proud. We'll say sorry when you run into us, and we love hockey. But when it came to unity, defining who we are as a nation, I was stuck. Because the truth is, unity in Canada was never quite simple. Like most colonial societies, Canada was founded in the crucible of conflict between settlers and Indigenous peoples who were violently displaced and silenced, between French and English armies, between Catholics and Protestants. Each of these tested the fabric of a new nation and challenged the very foundations of who we thought we were. For much of our early history, we modeled ourselves in the image of Mother England, its institutions, its values, its manners. Even after fighting bravely through 2 world wars and emerging as a middle power, we still spoke with a borrowed accent. But through every strain, every conflict, every test, a quiet but powerful sense of unity was formed, not by ignoring tensions, but by surviving them together. Then came the age of globalization. With the rise of American culture, Canadian identity didn't evolve. It eroded. Music, movies, television, fashion, it came flooding north, and we let it in. Our young people wore their brands, copied their slang, and sometimes forgot to say A. At one point, the only way to tell that we are from Canada is that we still thought maple syrup was a food group. We became more multicultural, yes, but not necessarily unified. We celebrated diversity in a way few other countries had, but this time, instead of building unity through struggle, we drifted into isolation. Immigrant communities settled in enclaves. Quebec debated separation. Indigenous peoples fought for recognition and justice. Without a clear shared identity, we became a country of separate conversations, speaking louder, but listening less. Because how do you unify a country built on stolen land? How do you rally around a flag when the last residential school closed in 1996? When nationalism has led to genocide and war, and unity itself has been used as a tool to exclude. For a while, I thought we may never be truly united again, that the idea of a shared Canadian identity had quietly disappeared behind polite smiles and vague platitudes. And then, of all people, Donald Trump reminded us of who we are. When he referred to our Prime Minister as the Governor of Canada and joked that our country should become the 51st state, something unexpected happened. We stood up. From Newfoundland to Nunavut, Toronto to Tofino, Canadians of every background pushed back. Not with hostility, but with a collective motive. We were not America's younger sibling. Out of this quiet but powerful sense that this country, with all its flaws and complexities, was ours, and it was worth defending. And that's when I realized unity had never left. It was simply buried under decades of self-doubt. It was uncomfortable to claim pride in a country that has done so much harm. But true unity doesn't ignore the past. It confronts it, it owns it, and it grows from it. That's why today I say, elbows up, Canada. And no, not like the hordes of people outside the door when Walmart opens on Black Friday. I mean, elbows up like the way Gordie Howe meant it. Canada's original Mr. Hockey. He didn't skate timidly. He came in, elbows up, ready to take space, to be seen, to play hard, but fair. It was confident, iconically Canadian. A warning shot in hockey form. Not elbows up in aggression, but in confidence, in presence. For too long, we've kept our elbows tucked in, careful not to offend, afraid to take space. But unity requires space. It requires honesty, and it requires the courage to see our nation as it is, not just as we wish it were. Canada doesn't need to be a perfect country to be a proud one. We need to be a real one that acknowledges its wounds and forges forward together. So no, we are not Britain, and no, we are not America. We are Canada, confident, courageous, and finally learning to stand tall, elbows up.
Thank you very much for that speech. Okay, we move on to the Q&A. So does anyone have any questions? Yes.
You mentioned residential schools. As a non-Canadian, what is that and how it is related to unity?
So residential schools were something that came about from the Catholic Church when Canada was being founded, and it was a horrible institution that took our Indigenous peoples, the people that were living on our land before we came and colonized it, and basically tried to strip away their culture. Innocent children, people as old as some of your parents in the audience, some of you in the audience, your grandparents, your great-grandparents, took them to a place where they were stripped of their identity, forced not to speak their native language, and told to confine with the societal norms. And so, when you have a country that is so broken, that, as I said in my speech, has so many separate conversations, where people feel oppressed, where people feel that they can't be themselves, you can't be united. And so I think that's one of the beautiful things of Canada as a much newer country, especially compared to the United Kingdom where we're standing, is that we have so much room to evolve. We're still growing, we're still figuring ourselves out, and we're allowing for the space for people in the residential schools where they were suffering to now have the time where we in schools today acknowledge what happens. Before important school events, we acknowledge the land that we're standing on, the people that lived on it before us. And I just think it's a great way to reunite our society that was so broken. Thank you.
Thank you for that question. Thank you for the answer. Any more questions, please? Yes. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for your speech. Do you think that in reality it is essential for there to be a shared enemy for unity to take place?
I really don't think so. Coming as a Canadian, and one of the stereotypes being we're so nice, we're so friendly, we always say sorry, I really don't think there needs to be a common enemy, but there needs to be something that sparks the unity. So in some cases it can be a common enemy like, as I mentioned, what's going on in the US or with residential schools. A common enemy does bring people together, but it can also in some instances drive people apart. So I think that it's very situational. It depends on the case where challenges like I was hearing in one of our competitors' speeches about Chile, how they had 17 years of a military dictatorship. And that conflict, that common enemy that a lot of the civilians thought was their enemy, they had to be united. And she said that their president said that we need to be united, military and civilians together. So I think that, yes, while sometimes enemies do cause unity and they could also break unity too.
Thank you for that answer. Yes.
Canada is such a huge country, and each of the provinces has a very separate landscape and often an individual quality about its own culture. How does Canada bring those things together as a whole?
Well, I think that some of the things that make us such a beautiful country is that diversity. And so I think one thing that I really like to live by when talking about unity is if you ask, I think, 10 different Canadians what it means to be Canadian, you're going to get 11 different answers. Because I think being Canadian to each person means so many different things. It could mean loving maple syrup, being so nice, but also, as you were mentioning, the different areas. So we have the Inuit people up north and who, in like our northern provinces, who love and praise the land and live off it. We have more urban people and more people like coming from the US, a lot of immigrants in Toronto where I live. And so I think that the main things that brings us together is when we can all travel our country to meet all the different people that make us one. And I think that also our divisiveness, the fact that we're such a diverse country from our immigration, from our massive country and our different landscape is what also makes us such a united country, is that we don't have one thing that makes us Canadian. We have so many different things, and being Canadian means so many different things to different people.
That's great. I think we have time for one last question if anyone has. If not, then I'm happy to close the Q&A. No, I don't see any hands. Thank you very much.
So, my name is Rahim Kara, and I am from Pakistan. And the topic of my speech is true unity from nature to us. And to start, I really want you to listen to the steps of the army that is coming. Left, right, left, right. They are relentless, programmed to kill anything that does not resemble them. They are here for a war of non-acceptance. But then a droplet falls from the sky, then another, and a chorus of raindrops, all united, descend from the heavens, united to break the dam. The flood comes rushing in, sweeping entire colonies in its path. If these armies were human, we would hear the cries of every man for himself. But they are something much smaller. They are the tiny fire ants. And fire ants join together, quite literally, limb to limb, mouth to mouth, and form a living, floating raft that survives the flood. Astonishing. And if one ant dies, another replaces it, keeping the raft intact. And when the flood recedes, they don't celebrate. Instead, they simply rebuild. So if the ants can have unity in their instinct, why can't we have it in our choices? See, we're the superior species, divided by land, politics, culture, race, something as even trivial as personal preferences. We chase control. We compete without cooperating, while the answer lies beneath our feet. The examples of nature in unity. Taking the examples of trees. They don't steal from their own roots, do they? Trees are made up of many, many parts. And these parts can be the leaves that absorb the sunlight and oxygen, the roots that collect water and minerals from the soil, the stem that provides structure and transportation, and the flowers that are essential for the future generation. If these parts were human, then they would battle for superiority. You would see each of these parts trying to outshine the other, competing against each other, and there would be no tree. But instead, these parts embrace their individual strength, acknowledge who they are, yet cooperate with one another, ensuring the tree's survival. If the tree can do it, why not us? Our minds are like a battleground where each of our parts are arguing with each other. Should I follow my dream career, or should I choose a safer path? Should I speak up or stay silent? Should I forgive or should I hold on to resentment? These choices, they do shape you into who you are. But in these moments of turmoil, what keeps us afloat? The answer is our connectors, our gluers, our families, our friends, our teachers, even that one random guy that smiled at us on a bad day. They remind us that unity is possible externally and internally. Yes, you heard it right. It's possible to be united in a community, but it is also possible to be united with your own self. Embrace your fears, understand your doubts, and let all your voices flow through you. Because these things, they shape you into who you are. Why do I mention trees and fire ants? Because I love them. I even played around them when they were being planted in my school, talked to them, and cried when they were being cut down. And they teach me these very important lessons. We don't need to look outside the box to find unity when there is already something existing inside. And one last thing that I want you to leave while you go outside and learn to live your life. That is, like my own community, the Aga Khan community, it has achieved this unity. Through our late leader, Aga Khan IV, Prince Karim Shah, he says, and I quote, "Tolerance openness and understanding towards other people's cultures, social structures, values and faiths are essential to the very survival of an independent world. This means that we must stand together, learn to embrace one another, and understand that just like nature, or maybe better, we can evolve and be united. Not as nations, but as a global village. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that speech. Thank you. Question time then. Any questions? Hands up. Yes. Oh.
Great speech.
Thank you so much.
You talk about obviously unity and how important it is to sing the same song, if you like, together. But is there any room for diversity? Is there any room for people having opposing opinions that might actually still make the other side think about a different way of doing things?
Yes, I agree on that point, that diversity is the reason for conflict. Wait, that's not the case, is it? But doesn't that mean change and differences bring conflict and destruction and damage? No. It means that once you embrace one another, understand who we are, even right now standing here, we all are from different cultures, yet we listen. And that listening helps us to achieve pluralism. And that is the reason for the diversity, yet unity. So don't be like the ants, okay? Don't be uniformed. Be united in diversity. Evolve from the example that I give you. Because we humans, we evolve. I hope the answers.
Thank you for that question. Thank you for that answer. Anyone else? Questions? Hands up. Any questions from the judging panel at all? No? Okay then. Thank you very much, Raheem.
Of course.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Emma Pupp, and I am representing Hungary, and the title of my speech is Finding Unity. Unity. I feel like most of us at some point have found this ideal appealing and aspiring. Knowingly or unknowingly, we wish to connect with others, be that in our personal lives regarding loved ones and relationships, communities of shared interests, or our ideas concerning government and politics. While a lovely sentiment, this quote from Gandhi describes a rigid understanding of unity. Thanks to a lack of time adverbs, the quote, "Unity to be real must stand the severest strain without breaking," can be understood in multiple different ways. If we believe this idea to be timeless, then whatever unity that existed at some point in time should remain unchanged till eternity. But I don't think it's that simple. Take absolute monarchs, for example. Throughout history, multiple rulers have tried to achieve unity within their own kingdoms. Louis XIV and Joseph II are prime examples of these types of monarchs who put multiple laws in place, such as language laws or laws that restricted religious freedom, hoping to unify the countries they were ruling over. Unsurprisingly, true unity, how they imagined it, was never achieved. Harmony could be maintained for a short while, but we all know how the French love to strike. Truly, it was only a matter of time before they had had enough and started chopping people's heads off. You cannot simply group millions of people together and expect them all to conform to your specific ideas. I mean, sure, humans in general love categorizing themselves based on age, gender, and even looks. We find unity in fashion trends, striving to look like our favorite celebrities, obsessing over bands and musicians, and even silly stereotypes, such as Hungarian women are beautiful, which, let's face it, is just objectively true. So you see, unity can be found in the most mundane of spaces. It helps us feel like we're a part of a group and brings with itself a sense of belonging. We may feel like these groups and their unity grant us the freedom of expressing ourselves, but do they really? Not to mention that ideals, concepts, or taste change much too fast. This is especially true in a postmodern world. It seems close to impossible for us to be able to create a sense of unity that will be everlasting. But does unity need to last forever to be real? What about all the times it did signify a strong sense of belonging, but it no longer exists? Should our ideologies and concepts of government or human rights remain unchanged? Can you imagine that art will never change with the passing of time? Should we stop changing or making changes altogether because we are constantly aspiring to maintain the unattainable idea of unity? But what if the quote refers to temporary unity? I feel like this type of unity is commonly found in our personal lives too. Members of friend groups and secret clubs definitely all share a sense of unity at some point, but this unity tends not to last forever. For example, my parents are divorced, which to me was never a big deal considering they signed the papers as soon as I was born. We may not signify the classic case of familial unity. We don't share a house, half my weekends are spent at a different apartment, and I have a half-brother. But even so, my parents are still friends. There's no bad blood between them. We even go on family vacations together. The unity of marriage isn't present in their relationship anymore, but that doesn't mean that all the time my parents spent together prior to their divorce is suddenly meaningless. And it certainly doesn't mean that I feel like something is missing every time we're together simply because my dad goes home to a different apartment at the end of the day. Essentially, unity is hard to achieve and even harder to maintain. It will never last, at least not in the way the quote describes, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. In fact, I think it's a good thing that we're able to learn and explore new ideas without the constraints of unity. That's not to say unity is useless, not at all. Unity, at its core, is a feeling as though you're part of something bigger than yourself. You're no longer just an individual, but part of a group. In real life, unity tends to break, either because it cannot endure the severest strain or simply due to the passing of time and the changes that it brings. Nevertheless, the fact that unity is bound to cease to exist does not make its existence less real while it lasts. Therefore, we should cherish our unity and its fragility. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that speech. Question time then. Yes, Zach.
We're talking a lot about unity, temporary versus permanent, and how at sometimes unity is not going to last forever. But what do you think are some ways that as a society we can try to prolong our unity for as long as we can?
Thank you for your question. I think this is a very interesting topic, simply because prolonging unity, while it sounds, on paper, it sounds to be a perfect thing, is very difficult because we are constantly changing and evolving as a species, and our ideologies are constantly evolving with us. So sometimes the better option is not necessarily to maintain that unity, but to twist it and mold it into something different so that we can preserve, not even preserve, but learn and grow with the passing of time. I think it's very important to maintain a sense of unity between our countries, for example. But I also think that considering certain political parties, it's definitely important to take into account that our ideologies regarding the world and regarding our countries and nationalities definitely change over time. I hope that answered your question.
Thank you for the question. Thank you for the answer. Yes. Any further questions from participants from the panel? None? Okay then. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
So ladies and gentlemen, my name is Ilona. I come from France, and the title of my speech is Unity, a Utopia? Unity. What an interesting word. It means that a group gets together to be one. Unity. Gandhi surely was a good leader, but to me, he was more of a dreamer. He believed in unity between human beings. That's what I call a utopia. We live in a world where our species declared itself superior to any other. We live in a divided world. We divided our planet into continents, countries, cities. We divided our own species into races, black, white, Asian. But when did humans get united? And most of all, when did unity actually last? Our way of communicating is war. war against our opponents, war against any obstacles, war against the people in power, and mostly war against the people in power. We can take the French or Bolshevik revolutions as great examples. These movements started peacefully, but the governing parties did not want to listen. Therefore, they tried to destroy the system by strength. Unity against power. But unity of a part of a country's population destroying a whole country's government. To be honest, I don't think that communicating with the people in power would have been very efficient either, as most leaders would do anything to stay in power. But what would have you done if you were the displeased people of these countries? Would you speak up or fight for your rights? As I said, war is the human way of communicating. And 15 to 30% of wars, including terrorist attacks, had religious motivations. I could, of course, talk about the Crimean War or the Irish Bloody Sunday, but I would like to evoke a less obvious religious conflict. In the early 16th century in Central America, Spanish conquistador Hernán Cortés discovered the Aztec city of Tenochtitlan. At first, he got really curious about their culture and traditions, but the more he understood their religion, the more he got convinced that they were demons. Human sacrifices, mythical creatures looking like God, nothing to go with Christianity. They tried to fight back, but they were weaker than the Spanish bullets. Unity, even though a Christian value, didn't matter. Humans killed humans. What would have you done if you had been a conquistador? Would you kill a whole civilization for a religion? But even though humans haven't been united much on a large scale, they have on smaller scales, like a country or a social background. We unite with what we know, with who we know. We unite with our people with the same mindset, the same culture, the same language. George H. Mead said, "Society is unity in diversity." But we fear the unknown. And to fight this fear, communication is key. Key to avoid war, to bring hope of a real unity between human beings. But what would you do if you had to choose between your people or strangers? You're going to tell me, how can we manage to communicate if we're afraid to do so? Well, I think there is no better solution than trying. Speak up. Speak loud. If you want to understand yourself and others better, if you want to lock your fear of the unknown in a cage, then get yourself out of the cage. This competition, for example, it brings people from the entire world together to speak about what they aim, to show who they are and that their voices matter. Every single one of us matters. We owe each other respect, and everyone deserves to be listened to. Communication sounds like no big deal after all. We just have to put our differences aside, and most of all, be ourselves. What would you do for humans to one day be united, for this utopia to be real? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ilona. Questions then? Anyone? Yeah.
Right. So the speech was fantastic. It was amazing, really.
Thank you very much.
Really motivating. So my question to you is that you mentioned that in your speech that unity is not really, it's not really going to be lasting because people fight each other. They're not really embracing each other. So if like our world right now is now like a global village, it's a very small world where people can travel from one place to another really easily. How can one actually embrace the other even though communication is not really bridging the gap because the other person's not really ready to listen? So how does that unity is formed even though one is not ready to accept the other?
Well, I think there we can talk about group power. As a group, you're more powerful. You're more likely to convince people that what you think is the right way of thinking. It is often used in medias to convince you for any type of fake news, like, this is a banana. It's actually an apple. You see? I would say that unity cannot happen if we're alone. You can, as you said, unite with yourself. But to act, to make everyone act, you cannot be alone. You cannot be on your own. So you have to speak up, to tell people what you think, what you feel, to make them get into your cause, to make them hope that the world can change. Thank you.
Thank you for that question. Thank you for that answer. Any other questions on the participant? Yes, please.
Love the speech and the take. I just have a little question. You said that
Yeah.
unity is an utopia.
Yep.
Why is that wrong?
I don't think it's a wrong thing, actually. I think it is a good thing because it makes people hope. It makes people feel that they can get to something that is slightly perfect. We managed to unite with one another. It never actually lasts, but we managed to do it. And this gives hope for future generations, for our generation to one day be able to make this unity last longer and longer and longer, for maybe one day make it last forever. Thanks for your question.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for the answer. Any more questions from participants? I can't see any hands. Or from the judges at all? No? Okay then. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Carmela from the Philippines. I'll be presenting To Infinity and Beyond. It isn't a one-trick pony. That's what makes the Toy Story franchise so good. Woody, Buzz, and the rest of the crew didn't present a good story just once. They did so multiple times, again and again, from 1995 to 2019. Now, it is especially remarkable when you note that each Toy Story film was released for a different audience from different generations, yet they were all hits. This is the perfect personification of what Mahatma Gandhi said. Unity, to be real, must stand the severest strain without breaking. Because maybe you could look at it from a different angle and modify to say that unity, to be real, must not only stand the severest strain, but should stand multiple strains without breaking. It should not be single use. It should not be a one-trick pony. Instead, it should strive to preserve itself, evolving and ever ready for the next challenge ahead. Collaborations and alliances nowadays seem to only achieve one goal and break as soon as the leaders of said alliances can't reap any more benefits from each other. This unity is disposable, formed, shown, applauded at by the masses, but breaks as soon as there is no need for it anymore. I refuse to believe that this is the kind of unity Gandhi meant. Consider one of the greatest alliances of all time. In 1945, the Allied forces and their defeat of Nazi Germany had been the greatest feat of unity the world had ever seen. They were successful in suppressing Adolf Hitler's threat for total world dominance and spread of fascist ideologies. Soon after, though, the Cold War. Tensions between allies of both the United States and the Soviet Union had made them grow wary. It now seemed like their previous allies were the next big threat. Now, I'm not a war nor political hotshot, but hey, I find it extremely absurd for you to end a war just to start a new one. What's even more absurd is that this seems to be a pattern to which many collaborative efforts fall victim. My own country has its version. In 1986, Filipinos from all walks of life, exhausted of a 21-year-long dictatorship, filled Epifanio de los Santos Avenue. What was once a common throughway became the venue for my people's peaceful protest, begging to be rid of its then tyrant. This historic event became known as the EDSA People Power Revolution. The seeming end of tyranny and resurgence of Philippine democracy. That's what we thought. 39 years later, my countrymen are still poor, the government is still corrupt, and much of human rights still isn't upheld. The revolution was instrumental and remarkable in its own right. But it would have been even more significant if its efforts were sustained and continuously changed the landscape of my country. Again, I refuse to believe a one-trick pony unity is Gandhi's vision. We should strive for unity that isn't expendable. One that mirrors the unity of Woody, Buzz, and the rest of the toys from Toy Story. Well, yes, it is a film meant to entertain children. It's a cartoon for the love of it. It's there to entertain children and to instill critical values to them. Values of commitment and loyalty to a cause. Loyalty to Andy. And then the other kid that people said doesn't belong in the Toy Story franchise anymore because it's not Andy, but it's a whole different conversation. Because yes, they constantly use the same characters. They even have the same plot of, oh God, I'm lost and I have to get back to Andy for 5 times now, going on 5 times in 2026. Yet, what makes their unity great is that it is tweaked to fit the bill of whatever strain is in front of them. Yes, unity, to be real, must stand the severest strain without breaking. And that severest strain is the challenge of being tested more than once and still remain intact. True unity does not only stand one strain. Instead, it is sustainable. Instead, it grows, as Buzz Lightyear says, to infinity and beyond.
Thank you very much, Kamala. Thank you for the speech. Questions? Any questions? Please raise your hands. Or, yes?
I wanted to know, do you have other examples of cartoons that could show this perseverance in unity?
Yeah, well, okay. I'm gonna derail to your question a little bit. Because when we were researching this, truth be told, I wrote this speech before watching Toy Story. It was finished, and then I watched Toy Story completely. Every single Toy Story film shows that semblance of unity, not a one-trick pony unity. See, my story that I'm trying to tell is that, Mahatma Gandhi said, stand the severest strain. And we're looking at one strain. We're expecting one strain. But the thing is, these characters have multiple strains. Woody got lost like 500 different times throughout the franchise, and you would expect that Lotto the bear was the severest strain, or Andy going to college was the severest strain. But that loyalty was kept. Hey, if Woody stopped trying to get back to Andy only when he survived Lotso, then their unity would have been broken and we wouldn't have a 5th Toy Story film coming out next year. But the thing is, he survived one strain, and then he survived another, and another, and another, and that unity, that longevity is what makes it remarkable. So I'm sorry for derailing from your question a little bit, but 5 minutes doesn't allow me to explain how immensely beautiful and connected I found a simple kids movie franchise to something as great and as bold and remarkable as Gandhi.
Thank you for your question. Thank you for the answer. Any more? You had a hand raised. Did
Yes.
you raise it? Go for it.
So, wonderful speech. It was really mind-blowing.
My question for you is really simple. That unity, even though it survives a strain, right now, living in this world, we see that the reality is something else. We see that people are actually having wars with each other, as you said. And because people have united in the past, even though it did not leave a lasting impact, they still have tried. So what do you suggest us and the people around the world to actually do to unite and leave an impact that is forever or maybe a little longer lasting?
See, our goal is never perfection. Perfection, I think Tess mentioned, utopia, perfection is a unity that lasts forever. But the thing is, and another, was it you, Emma, that brought it up, that people change, and of course unity will collapse when the particles of it have different ideas. And the thing is, going back to Toy Story, wow, really referencing this a lot. The thing is, as I said, their unity is always fit to tweak the bill of whatever strain is in front of them. The first movie, Woody was united with Buzz, because they were both like alpha types, all right? And they had to get back to Andy, so they united. His personality, Andy's personal personality, or Woody rather, was tweaked. In the second movie, he came across Jessie and the rest of the toys that he was released with in the 1920s or decades ago, and he united with them. And he said, "Let's go to Andy. Let's go together because that's where a lot of unity is." So I think I mentioned it already. Unity, the perfection of unity isn't for forever, but for some sense of longevity. And for that sense of longevity, what we must do is tweak ourselves, is to change ourselves and know that we are coming home to a certain goal, to something that unites us, to something that is collectively important to us. So if we remain true to ourselves and true to our message, it doesn't matter how much we change. It doesn't matter how much the world changes around us. What matters is that we know a message and we stick to it. Thank you for the question.
Thank you. I think we just have time for one very quick question. Did I see one other arm raised? Did you want to go for it very quickly?
I love your speech. You talk about a lot about perseverance and adapting. I just wanted to know, when have you, especially you individually, have persevered and adapted despite
This speech. Wait, there's a little bit of a story. The speech in my national competition was about a local candidate, the current president of the Philippines, who, by the way, remember the dictator that I was talking about earlier? The current president of the Philippines is his son, which is so humorous and so funny, and let's not even talk about it because it is depressing. So, that was that speech. And I thought, I'm going to come to England and I'm going to talk about a local candidate. Well, he's not the president, a local president. How are you guys going to relate to that? So I scrambled to find for an explanation of unity in my belief that would fit the bill of our international and multicultural audience, and I struggled. I was crying. My coaches don't know this, but I said to my mom, how stupid am I that I'm presenting like 20 different iterations of this and they're not taking any of them? They're all saying, it doesn't make sense, it's too far of a jump, and I'm like, maybe I'm just not built for this. Maybe I'm not meant to advocate for unity if I can't even unify between myself and my coaches, man. But I kept going. I tried to find something that was the middle ground between my idea of unity and my elders, my seniors' idea of unity, and we came across this, and now I'm standing here, and now I think I've done a good job, and so perseverance pays off.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Carmela.
Hello, my name is Tino. I'm from Thailand, and the title of my speech is Purgatory of Harmony. Bang! A security guard collapses. Your worst nightmare had just come true. It felt like a few seconds ago had just passed since your last conversation with your fellow bank employees. The next thing you know, you're trapped inside of a small bank vault, waiting for rescue. However, something interesting happens. The gunman, once a terrifying figure, he begins to smile. He offers you comfort, He shares stories. He assures you your safety. Slowly, your judgment gives in to his charms, and the smell of lead has now become sweet. The police arrive. You hesitate. The door is wide open for you, but your feet are glued to the floor. You pled for his safety, raising money for his legal defense, believing that his life is yours to aid. What I have just described you there is not some hypothetical scenario. No. This is the story of Stockholm Syndrome, a tale that has been reborn to a cage for millions of men, women, and children into a place hidden behind their own comfort, the prison of domestic abuse. Now, I think some of you might be thinking, well, how lucky am I not to be one of those victims because, well, whew, such a lucky people. But, well, of course, it is indeed normal to value your life. Let me ask you a question. If you were one of those bank workers, what would you have done? Would you perhaps sneak out at night? Or would you find that first opportunity to strike and overpower? Whatever you say, what if I tell you that you were destined to come back? Dr. Patrick Kahns, founder of the International Institute Against Domestic Violence, suggests that trauma bonding, the attachment from the cycles of rewards and punishment, leaves victims psychologically entrapped. Just look at the statistics. The National Coalition Against Domestic Violence suggests that victims leave and come back of up to 7 times before escaping permanently. And what scale are we talking about here? Well, the WHO said that up to 1/3 of the entire female population has experienced this tragic fate. And for the men, the NIH points towards 20% of male Americans who went to the same predicament last year. But, well, that's just the tip of the iceberg. Ladies and gentlemen, I may have omitted some key details from all of you. The thing is, the greatest trick the devil ever pulled was convincing the world he didn't exist. We have normalized abuse. She stayed because he loved her. He forgave because family comes first, or that blood is thicker than water. Ironically, this last quote isn't complete because the actual quote is the blood of the covenant is thicker than the water of the womb, completely juxtaposing that very notion. Yet we resort to contort and distort love. For what? Do you want the coercion of 50 Shades of Grey to be the representation that we need? Why do we keep normalizing these things? So what now? Our backs against the wall, with no sort of salvation to all of this. Well, if these discourses can teach us one thing, then it should be this. If us humans made all of these ideas, then we have every right to disassemble it, to reiterate it, to change it, eradicate it completely. I encourage you all, in true Nietzschean fashion, to critique with a hammer and hit the bells of ideas and show how hollow these dogmas can be. And only then can these myths of endurance at all costs can be eradicated and give rise to what is truly ours, liberation. And only then can the quote-unquote unity can stand against the severest strain without breaking can happen. Bang! This time, nobody's injured. Nobody's hurt. That was not a sound of a gunshot. That was a sound of a firework of hope, a signal that the scripts can change. The question is, will you change it? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tino. Great speech. Q&A. Any hands up? Anyone want to ask a question? Yes.
So your speech was basically about abuses in like relationships, and I wanted to know how can unity have a bad impact on a relationship? What sort of unity is there in a family for abuse? Like, that was my word, but I don't know if you got me. Like, what type of unity brings abuse? Like, is there a real type of unity in this relationship or in between human beings for there to be such abuse?
That's a great question. So let me analyze this a bit. When we talk about unity, of course, you would think of something positive, of course, but this unity that I'm describing is a unity that basically uses the idea that a family has to be a loving family that cares for the children, and using the idea of something that's so powerful. I would say the most powerful concept that human has, love. And use that as an excuse to torment, to cage them, and to not let them leave out of their own situation. And that is the unity that I'm talking about when we're talking about abuse.
Thank you for your question, and thank you for your answer. Any more questions? Yes.
Yes.
Your speech was really amazing. I loved it, really. It was a sensitive speech, I believe. So my question for you is really simple. Since you touched the topic of domestic violence, it is a topic that is sensitive for many, many people, and I believe it is a topic that should be discussed immediately as well. What is your advice to people who have either gone through this or have not gone through this, but actually want to do something about it? And I think that covers all of us in the room. So what do you want to give us as an advice to stop domestic violence?
That is the perfect question that I want today, actually. I know we can laugh about this because it's not directly about abuse, quote unquote, but here's the thing. The reason why I even wrote the script is really because of my aunt. She basically endured domestic violence, till today, even to today, for more than 30 years by now. It's okay, you don't have to be sorry. But, well, I've learned a lot of things, even though I'm not really that in touch with her. But I've learned that with abuse and with people who are so down with their lives, it's not that they don't have the means. It's not that they don't have a way to get out. I feel like people around them don't listen enough and ask the right question. Not the quote-unquote question that, are you all right? When you can clearly see that they're really down and depressed. And for me, what I always ask my aunt when I visit her, no matter how horrible my uncle is, trying to shove his ideas and trying to use his illness as a way for him to win her over, I always ask her, what would be the resources that will lift you out of that problem? Just that one question truly let me know all of the problems that she was facing, that even though she still hasn't recovered from it because you need therapy and all that, but still, just that little insight into her problem was already powerful enough for her to move on, to disregard such things as the root of ideas and try to engage in a rhizomatic thinking, not deriving from a familyhood that's just a faulty representation of someone. No.
but as something that can be used on its own with their own values, disregarding their own genetic background. Thank you.
Thank you for your question. Thank you for your answer. Any more questions? Yes,
Sure.
final one.
Thank you, Tia, for sharing your life experience. You've talked about love being weaponized. To me, love is not dimming each other's lights and glowing together. So I wondered, what does healthy love mean for you? How would you define it? And what's that kind of messaging you would say to others?
That's a wonderful question. Although, as a 17-year-old who has never been in a relationship, would probably not be knowledgeable in terms of love, in terms of romantic love, of course. But the love that I've been akin to, throughout my life is that of my mother. So, and that is basically the template that I would want to give you all. Is that no matter how hard and how tormenting just, carrying me all day, even wiping my buttocks, when I poop my pants when I was a little kid, all those things. It's just sometimes it is disgusting, even though it's from her own womb. But it's just the fact that even accumulating all those experiences from her own side, she could still see the light in me that you don't have to worry about me. It's a selfless sacrifice. It's this altruistic need that we all need to have. That no matter the case, that we should not always seek to be the dominant one. We should always bend and give someone the space that they need to be loved as they should be throughout their entire life.
Thank you for the question. Thank you.